Hey guys, welcome to the Field of 68 YouTube channel. If you like what you see here, hit that subscribe button and you'll get more college basketball content just like this. I got a hot take about the Big 12 and I got to get you guys' opinions on this cuz I don't know if I'm taking crazy pills, but part of me kind of thinks that this love fest for how difficult the Big 12 is has a lot to do with the Big 12 just kind of beating up on each other and them having all these great computer numbers, okay? So Texas and Oklahoma is the perfect example of this for me. Texas goes on the road. They beat Oklahoma, who's ranked number 11, by 15 points. We're all going to rave about how big of a win this is because Oklahoma looks great in the rankings. And they have this great computer profile. Well, Oklahoma's big wins this season right now. They beat Iowa on a neutral floor, whatever. They beat USC on a neutral floor, okay. They beat Arkansas on a neutral floor, that's fine. They beat Providence at home, I guess that's pretty good. Then they got Iowa State and they got Cincinnati on the road, right? Which are good wins if you think that the Big 12 is good and buy the computer metrics. Texas, who just beat them, their wins this season, LSU on a neutral. They won at Cincinnati, which I guess is pretty good. Now they won at Oklahoma. They have beaten Baylor at home, which is a pretty good win, but that's basically one good win, one great win between those two teams, right? You look at TCU. They've beaten Houston at home. And beyond that, it's like everything is on Oklahoma win, another team in the Big 12. Cincinnati, same kind of thing. They won at BYU. They beat TCU in overtime. Are we really that impressed with TCU when they haven't really beaten anyone themselves? So I guess what I'm asking, Henson, is the Big 12 actually good? Is it this good? Or is it just a bunch of like pretty good teams that are cannibalizing each other and beating up on each other because there's no real difference between the best team and like the 12th best team?
Yeah, we talked about how like kind of like the SEC floor, like are they really good or are they just beating up each other? And then, but at the end of the day, the SEC is the SEC and it's the best conference in the land, and they judge that by championships, which the Big 12 hasn't been able to do per se as of late. But I think Cincinnati is the epitome of the Big 12. They beat BYU at BYU. They lose by 1 to Texas, lose by 3 to Baylor, beat TCU, lost by 4 to OCU, lose by 5 in Fog Island, and they're at the bottom of the standings. I think that shows how good the Big 12 is because Cincinnati's a good team, in my opinion. And they're literally 2 possessions away from potentially being 3 or 4 high level tournament teams. So I do think the Big 12 is a little overrated, but I mean, they've got 10, 11 teams that I think should and could get into that tournament. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, right? Everyone's going to be keeping tally of what the Big 12 does in March Madness. But right now, they're just a really deep league, and they're out of conference games that the teams have won and played. They fared fairly well as well. So um, I wouldn't say they're overrated, but not as good as people say they are.
Mac?
Man, I think it's a hell of a conference. I think that 5 games into conference play, I don't think you can really look at standings. I think it obviously depends on who you've played at home, who you've played away. But literally almost every team in the Big 12, outside of maybe 2 or 3 teams, brought in like heavy non-conference records. Now, you can nitpick on certain teams, like you talked about with Oklahoma, their strength of schedule in the non-conference. But for the most part, Big 12 isn't ducking anybody. And almost every team came in with a 12-1 record, 13-0 record, 10-3 record. Very, very few upsets by the teams that I think are going to be representing the Big 12 in the NCAA tournament. They are going to beat up on each other. It's a hard league, man. You play 2 games. Sometimes you're playing Saturday, Monday, home, then you go on the road. The Baylors, the Kansases, the Houstons of the world, like you got some really good teams, some really talented players. And John knows this, man. When you have a power conference, like if you're a team that's maybe towards the bottom and not necessarily going to be a team that makes the NCAA tournament, you probably got a dude or 2 on your team that can go off for 30 or 35 and upset somebody in your conference. And I think that's what's happening in a few of these games. I think they're going to have 10 bids, 11. It's certainly going to be really odd to see like what type of conference record still tournament. I know the committee never says says that never matters, but it's going to be really interesting to see this. The 7-13 get you in the NCAA tournament. 8-12 get you in the NCAA tournament. But a lot of deserving teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they'll probably get 10 or 11. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Pac-12 is looking more and more like a 1 or 2 bid league.
Yeah.
And the ACC might end up being like a 4 bid league. And you got to get these teams in from somewhere, right? Yeah, 2.5. You got to get these teams in from somewhere. You know, we might see 2 come out of the Missouri Valley. Depending on what happens with Dayton, we might see 2 come out of the Atlantic 10. We might see like 5, maybe 6 come out of the Mountain West, depending on how everything shakes out there. But you got to get these bids somewhere, and a lot of them are going to come from the Big 12. I just kind of feel a little bit like it's – so you remember the Big 10? I want to say it was like 2022 when I think they got 11 teams into the tournament, and I think maybe one of them made it out of the first weekend. It kind of feels like that a little bit to me, where there's a lot of good teams, and I don't know if there's necessarily – more than Kansas and Houston, any great teams, but I guess that will all kind of play out. And I will say this, I don't know if there's a league that has coaching the level that the Big 12 does, from team 1 all the way down to team 14. There's a lot of guys that are good there, a lot of home court advantages. You're right, it's a bear. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass. Maybe this is just the day where I talk out of my ass and I say some things and you guys try to talk some sense into me and it actually works. Who knows? We'll see if that happens. Thank you for watching the Field of 68. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, hit that like button, share this link with your friends, or check out the description for some other places that you can consume Field of 68 content.